All right, welcome to today's Explainer. Today, we're taking that dense, incredibly complex web of project planning and, well, we're translating it into actionable visual concepts that you can actually use. Because let's be honest, if you've ever felt totally overwhelmed by project management jargon, you are absolutely in the right place. We're going to break down exactly how to structure your planning, how to handle those constantly changing scopes, and how to capture those elusive requirements that literally make or break a project. So let's just dive right into this with a bit of a surprising truth. Does a project always start with a fixed, set-in-stone list of requirements? Well, yes, but also sort of, and maybe. It really depends on whether you're using predictive or hybrid methods. The actual starting line of your project isn't always fixed. In some projects, you map literally every single detail out on day one. In others, you're kind of just figuring it out as you go. To make sense of all these overlapping terms, we're going to follow a concept to application funnel today. Here's our agenda. We'll start with the project management plan, compare predictive versus adaptive approaches, look at defining your project scope, map things out with roadmaps and milestones, and finally, finish up with mastering project requirements. Let's get to it. Starting off with Section 1, the project management plan, setting the guardrails. This is where we anchor the entire project. You really want to think of this plan like the guardrails on a highway. It's the ultimate document that dictates exactly how the project is going to be executed, monitored, controlled, and eventually closed out. It includes all your subsidiary plans, your baselines, the whole shebang. But why does this actually matter? Well, because establishing these guardrails allows your team to stay in control. It gives them the freedom to act quickly and be flexible, but within a safe, clearly defined boundary. Now, there's a really critical distinction here, and honestly, this trips up a lot of professionals. There is a huge difference between the project management plan and project documents. Your daily project documents, the stuff their team creates just to manage the day-to-day work, those are simply artifacts. They're just records of the work. You maintain them, you archive them, but they are not components of the overarching management plan itself. The plan is your rulebook. The documents are just the game tape. So definitely don't try to cram every single meeting note into your master plan. Moving right along to Section 2, predictive versus adaptive approaches, planning across life cycles. Let's see how our planning shifts when we change methodologies. Looking at this comparison, you can really see how the planning shifts depending on your life cycle. Over on the predictive side, it's all about that detailed upfront planning. Requirements are locked in before development even starts, change is heavily constrained, and stakeholders, they mostly just pop in at specific milestones. But jump over to the adaptive or agile approach, and it's a completely different world. Requirements are elaborated frequently, change is happening in real time as you deliver, and stakeholder involvement is continuous. The hybrid approach kind of just sits comfortably right in the middle. Knowing which of these worlds you're operating in totally dictates how you're going to plan your scope. Which brings us to Section 3, defining your project's scope. Fixed versus flexible. Let's look at exactly how to define these boundaries. This is a brilliant way to illustrate that tension. Looking at the Sharp-A Lifestyle Center case study, check out the contrast here. The physical construction of the center has a project scope, meaning it is heavily fixed. You've got finalized blueprints, strict building codes, a very specific timeline. No wiggle room there. But the product scope, that involves the sales and marketing needed to actually fill that center with tenants. And that is highly flexible. It relies on market forces and what customers want right now. So the team has to deliver value iteratively. You have to know going in, are you managing the rigid blueprints or are you managing the flexible product value? To manage that kind of flexibility, especially when you're in an adaptive environment, we use a technique called rolling wave planning. Think of it literally like the ocean. As the project moves forward, the planning rolls in just like a tide. It's basically progressive elaboration applied to your work packages. I mean, you don't need to plan every microscopic detail of month 12 when you're only in month 1, right? You plan the immediate wave in high detail and keep the future waves high level until they get a bit closer. It gives you an immense amount of adaptability and resilience. Okay, Section 4, roadmaps and milestones, visualizing the journey. Once our scope is locked, we need tools to actually see the path ahead. And the absolute best way to start visualizing that path is with a product roadmap. It's exactly like a high-level street map. It envisions the big picture, displaying product strategy, overall direction, and the value you're delivering over time. It intentionally avoids getting bogged down in the minutia. I mean, you wouldn't want a street map that highlights every single pebble on the road, right? Instead, it uses broad goals. We call them themes to give you structure. It gives everyone a crystal clear visualization of both short-term and long-term targets. Along that roadmap, though, we need to drop some map pins. Those are our milestones. They act as absolutely crucial markers for major events, reviews, due dates, or big decision-making moments. They're the prompts that trigger reporting requirements or force us to get those mandatory sponsor approvals. A really solid milestone list will draw a clear line between which markers are mandatory by contract and which are just optional markers based on our own estimates. Now, in a modern hybrid environment, planning out all the scope is a lot like running a relay race. It's highly collaborative. The project manager kicks things off, facilitating the work breakdown structure. Then, they pass the baton to the product owner, who refines the backlog and fleshes out the user stories. Finally, the team takes the baton to actually estimate the effort and sequence those stories. Everyone has a distinct, absolutely necessary role in defining the scope. Finally, we're at the bottom of our funnel with Section 5, Mastering Project Requirements, the DNA of the project. This is all about gathering the granular data. So let's define this clearly. A requirement is one single measurable statement of a condition or capability that satisfies a business need. Sounds pretty simple, right? Well, getting it right is notoriously difficult. A true requirement has to be totally unambiguous, meaning you can definitively measure and test it. It has to be consistent, and you must be able to trace it all the way back to a specific stakeholder's need. Actually, here's a good rule of thumb. If you can't test it, it's not a requirement. It's just a wish. The really crucial point here is that not all requirements are created equal. Just take a look at this breakdown. They range from massive, high-level business requirements, the whole reason the project exists in the first place, all the way down to highly specific product requirements, which are the actual functional features you're building. Plus, you've got quality requirements to validate that the work is actually done, and stakeholder requirements to make sure specific groups get what they need. Recognizing these different buckets ensures nothing falls through the cracks. Now, to uncover all those diverse requirements, your team can't just, blast out a single email survey and hope for the best. You've got a massive toolkit at your disposal here. You can do brainstorming, one-on-one interviews, focus groups. You can use observation or dig into document analysis. You can use decision-making voting techniques or visual stuff like mind mapping and prototyping. The best project managers, they're always mixing and matching these tools to pull the absolute most accurate requirements out of their stakeholders. Once you've finally got all that data, you have to track it carefully. Enter the requirements management plan. And listen, this is not just some simple spreadsheet. It's a full-blown system. It sets up version control rules so you always know you're looking at the latest requirement. It dictates impact analysis, basically how you track and report changes. It sets prioritization criteria so the team knows what to build first. And it creates a traceability structure so every single feature links back to a core business objective. All right. We've covered a tremendous amount of ground today, from the rigid guardrails of a management plan to the rolling waves of adaptive requirements. But I want to leave you with a bit of a provocative thought to ponder as you jump back into your day-to-day. If Agile requirements and product scope are fundamentally designed to adapt continuously in real time, is a project's foundational plan ever truly finished, or is planning just a permanent, ongoing state of the project itself? Definitely keep that in mind as you map out your next complex project. Thanks so much for joining us on this explainer, and we will see you next time.